to all of my wonderful students and welcome to BYJU'S 6th, 7th and 8th grade channel. I'm your biology teacher Aishwarya, and in this particular video we are going to be covering the chapter crop production and management, where we will be doing a chapter summary in just under 30 minutes. And this is a part of our ongoing series on our channel, Crash Course, where we will revise your entire syllabus in 30 minutes each for every chapter. So I hope all of you today are excited. I hope all of you have your notebooks and pens ready with you as you are watching this video. Now, if you have been a regular visitor and a regular subscriber of the channel, please make sure that you quickly hit the like button of this video so that we can get started. But for those of you out there who have stumbled across this particular video and you are seeing us for the first time and wondering what happens in BYJU'S 6th, 7th and 8th grade channel, I'm just going to take 1 minute of your time to quickly tell you what we do. In BYJU'S 6th, 7th and 8th, we believe that champions are made here. Because what we believe is to make sure that we give you the highest quality of academics, making sure that you have in-depth knowledge of all of your chapters, because at the end of the day, this is where you build your foundation. So we pay a lot of attention to making sure that all of your academics gets covered in the best way possible. But that's just not it. We also make sure that we take a lot of upskilling classes for you, like how to manage your time effectively, helping you with effective note-making methods, easy tips to improve your English. So we just don't focus on one thing, but we look at your holistic development altogether. And we pair this along with some engaging classes to make sure that this is your one-stop destination for everything. So if you believe that champions are made here and you want to be a champion, then please make sure that you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon next to it so that you get the notifications of the channel at all times. But then again, if you feel like, why should I subscribe? Then I will tell you to just stay here for 5 minutes, and 5 minutes into this video, you will be convinced that this is where you will get everything. So without wasting any more time, let's get started with today's chapter summary. Now, of course, for this particular chapter, crop production and management, which is as a part of NCERT, I've already done a detailed one-shot class. So I will be tagging the video as well, and you can click on the tag above in case if you want an in-depth one-shot explanation with all of the details of this particular chapter. But of course, in this chapter, I will be giving you a quick summarized version as a capsule. Now, of course, when we talk about crop production and management, we are talking about the large-scale production of food and animal-based products. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about sources of food, we know that they are both plant-based as well as animal-based. And we need food because they are the food is nothing but the fuel that drives our body. Now, we know that we are able to do this large-scale production by a practice called agriculture. So what is agriculture? Agriculture is nothing but a branch of science that deals with the large-scale production of commercially necessary crops and animal-based products. Now, I did use a word crop, and this whole chapter revolves around crops. So what are these crops? Now, this will be a 1-mark question that you will definitely get. So please make sure that you put a star mark in your textbook. So crops are nothing but groups of plants that are cultivated on a large scale on the same piece of land. So what do you see right behind me? You see that there are different plots of land. And in each plot of land, you see that the same type of crop is being grown. So this is what we call as a crop. Now, the thing is, we don't just use one kind of crop. We have different kinds of crops, and different kinds of crops are nothing but different kinds of plants. And at the end of the day, they all require different climatic conditions. They require a lot of water, different types of water availability, different amounts of temperature, so on and so forth. Which is why, based on their cropping season, yes, look at the word I'm using. Based on their cropping seasons, they can be classified into 3 categories. That is Kharif crops, Rabi crops and Zaid crops. Now, of course, on an NCERT front, we see that CBSE talks about these 2, Kharif crops and Rabi crops. But there's nothing wrong in learning a little bit more, of course, that is on Zaid crops. But this, of course, will not come on an examination front. So let's first focus our attention into learning about Kharif and Rabi crops. Now, this easily is going to be a 2-mark question that will come as a difference-based question. Differentiate between Kharif and Rabi crops. Now, when we talk about kharif crops, we often also call them as monsoon crops because they are sown during the rainy seasons around June, July, and they are harvested around September, October time, right? And we see that paddy, maize, cotton, groundnut are all examples of kharif crops. But on the other hand, when we talk about rabi crops, they are often known as winter crops, right? And we see that they are normally sown around October, November time, and they're harvested around, February, March time, around that time. And we see that wheat, pea, grams, mustard are all examples of rabi crops. Then, of course, we have our zaid crops. Now, zaid crops are often known as summer crops because they are grown during the summer season, normally between March to May. And we see that pumpkins, cucumbers, watermelons are all of the crops that we normally categorize as zaid crops because they are grown during that summer season. So, with this, of course, on an examination front, this is what you need to remember. So, please make a star mark in your textbook. But now, of course, to grow all of these crops, right? It's not like growing a plant in our garden. Just take the plant, put it there, allow it to grow, maybe water it occasionally. Yes? That's not how we go about it. And because we're doing it at a large scale, we need to make sure that the practices that we follow are proper, which is where our 7 agricultural practices come into the picture. Now, this again is very important on an examination front where they will ask you to list down the 7 agricultural practices in sequence, right? So, please make sure that you know the sequence of agricultural practices. Now, our first step is preparation of soil, where we make sure that the soil is prepared to grow these crops at a large scale. Then we sow our seeds. Once the seed is sown, if at all any additional nutrients are needed to be added, they should be added to the soil. Once that is done, we see that we provide it with water and irrigate it. And after that, we see that we allow the plant to grow. Now, while the crops are growing, if at all some undesirable plants grow, we get rid of them. And of course, eventually, once it is fully mature, we will harvest it. Post-harvesting, of course, we will store it and then, of course, it will be sold to all of us. So this right here, starting with preparation, sowing, addition of nutrients, irrigation, removal of weeds, harvesting and storage are the 7 steps that you must know. So let's deep dive into understanding more about preparation of soil. Now, preparation of soil is done by loosening and turning the soil, which is what we call as plowing or tilling, right? And we see that this preparation of soil needs to be done. It's a very, very important step. Why? Because it allows for the roots to penetrate deeper, right? So it allows the roots to penetrate deeper into the soil, and this is necessary so that it allows for the absorption of water, and at the end of the day, this water is also necessary for the crops to grow. And we also know that loosening and turning of the soil also allows and affects the nutrient distribution, making sure that the nutrients are distributed properly in the soil. Now, how do I prepare my soil? That is where certain tools or agricultural implements come into the picture. Now we see that these tools can be traditional tools or they could be modern tools, right? Now we see that traditional tools normally require a lot of labor and it takes a lot of time. While modern tools, on the other hand, are more efficient and they require less labor, and we see that large areas of land can be covered in lesser amount of time. So by preparation of soil, I can use traditional implements like a plow or a hoe. Now, a plow that is there is normally used for tilling, but it is also used for removal of weeds. And we see that at times it can be done manually with, farmers employed. Or we see that a plow normally has a beam which can be attached to bulls, and these bulls will then carry it. While hoes also can be used, which is again a very manual tool, which is normally used for preparation and of course at times used for removal of weeds. But of course in this case we see that a lot of time is taken to cover a large area, right? Which is why over time modern implements have come into a picture where we have a cultivator that is attached to a tractor. Now the tractor would be driven and we see that at one go, the cultivator prepares a large area of soil, which thereby saves time and labor. So now with this, of course, we have prepared our soil. But then again, the next step that we need to do is to sow our seeds. Now, what is sowing? Sowing is nothing but laying of seeds in the soil. Now, this is a very important step. And how do we do this? It is done in multiple ways. In the earlier times, of course, there was a broadcasting method which was followed, wherein the farmers would just randomly scatter the seeds. Or over time, they have been using funnel sowing, where they would use this particular tool. They would attach it to, maybe a pair of bulls, and using these funnels at the bottom, they would sow the seeds. But there were some disadvantages. Because first and foremost, the seeds were not sown at a proper depth, and they were not equidistant. And if they are not equidistant, they would compete with each other. Which is why a seed drill had more benefits, because at the end of the day, the seed drill would make sure that it was sown at a proper depth and they were spread properly across in the soil. Now, of course, good quality seeds had to be chosen, not any random kind, which is why normally seeds would be immersed in water and all the damaged seeds would normally float up on top and the healthy seeds would be at the bottom. So healthy seeds would be then taken and then they would be sown. Now, once it is sown, of course, we feel like our job is done. But the thing is, for the seeds to grow and germinate, they require nutrients. Now, nutrients are of course naturally present in the soil, right? But again, over time, until now, I have been using this word a lot. That is large scale. We're talking about large scale production of all of these things, right? Large scale production of crops. So if I am growing a crop one after the other, yes, I'm growing crops simultaneously on my same piece of land, I'm not giving my soil enough time to replenish its nutrients. Which is why at times I may need to add these nutrients. So how will I add my nutrients? I can add my essential nutrients either in the form of manure or fertilizers. Now this right here is very, very important on an examination front because a lot of questions can be asked from this particular topic. So what are manures? Manures are organic matter which is obtained after decomposition of plants and animals, right? Dead plants and animals. And we see that it is obtained from the nature by the process of decomposition. So they are eco-friendly. While on the other hand, when we talk about fertilizers, we see that they are inorganic salts, right? So we see that these are inorganic salts which are normally manufactured in factories and as compared to manures are not very eco-friendly. So let's deep dive into learning more about manures. Now when we talk about advantages of manure, first and foremost, I told you it's obtained from nature, right? So on mixing the manure with the soil, we see that it enhances the water holding capacity, allowing more water to be retained, allows more water to seep through the soil, and then because the soil is made porous, also allows with the movement of gases as well. Now, along with this, what we also observe is that it improves or increases the friendly microbes in the soil and improves soil texture. Now, these advantages are very important to remember. They can ask you this for 4 marks on a long answer format question. But you also should be made aware of the disadvantages. Now, the main disadvantage is that you don't know how many nutrients are there in the soil, right? We see that in this case, it could lack some of the essential nutrients because at the end of the day, it's obtained from nature. And again, we see that storage is not easy, right? Storing manure does not become easy. But some added benefits that could also be there is that getting manure is relatively cheap and as mentioned, it is also eco-friendly. So if they ask you what are the advantages and disadvantages of manure, you have definitely, you know what to write. Long answer format question is a sure shot for this particular topic. Now moving on to the next one, which is fertilizers. Now, like I told you, fertilizers are inorganic salts and they have a definite amount of nutrients. So we see that on adding the right amount of fertilizers, it can improve the fertility of the soil and it's also very easy and portable. And along with this, we see that it's a quick solution for improving the yield. So because it's a definite amount of our essential nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, we see that the yield is almost definite, right? Improvement of yield is almost definite. But then again, excessive use, understand the term that I'm using. Excessive use of fertilizers can be harmful. Because at the end of the day, they are chemicals, right? And we see that too much of chemicals in the soil can cause chemical imbalance, right? And this again can affect soil fertility. Fertilizer runoff can cause water pollution and it can be injurious to health also. So this again is an easy 4 marker on writing and elaborating on advantages and disadvantages of fertilizers. Now a compare contrast questions between fertilizers and manure can also be asked. So please make sure that you do list both of them down as well if at all you are making your notes. Now, along with this, apart from, using manure and fertilizers, there could be cropping patterns that could be used, right? So what are these cropping patterns that could be done? So one such thing is crop rotation, where you grow two crops alternatively. Or what I would say is one after the other, right? So one after the other, when you grow crops, what happens is that your choice of crops becomes important. So here, what do you observe behind me? You can see that there at first I am growing corn or maize, and post that I am growing soya bean. Now soya bean here comes under the category of leguminous plants. Now leguminous plants are those plants wherein in their root nodules, right? So in their root nodules, we see that there is a bacterium called as rhizobium. And this rhizobium has the ability to perform nitrogen fixation, wherein atmospheric nitrogen is converted into usable forms. So this right here becomes very, very important to replenish the soil with nutrients. So technically, on growing soya bean, I'm not only growing a plant or growing a crop, but I'm also improving the soil fertility so that I can grow my next crop. Which is why crop rotation is most preferred when it comes to, usage when we talk about improving soil fertility, right? So this is very, very important again on an examination front. So with this, we have prepared our soil, sown our seeds, and we have added nutrients when necessary. Now the next thing comes is irrigation. Now irrigation is nothing but providing water at regular intervals. And we know that irrigation is necessary because at the end of the day, water is also necessary for germination and it's required for a lot of processes. Which is why water can be provided in different ways, or there are various methods of irrigation. Now again, we have traditional methods wherein we have, moat, chain pump, dhekli, rahat, which were all used in the earlier days. But one of the biggest disadvantages of using traditional methods was that there was a lot of wastage of water. Excess amount of water was being used, which is why over time the modern methods came into the picture. Now in modern methods, of course, we have sprinkler method and of course we have the drip irrigation. Now in sprinkler method, of course, we saw that there were various tubes with nozzles on top, right? So we saw that there were these nozzles, and from these nozzles, we would see that water would be sprinkled across. Now normally a sprinkler method was used for uneven land, right? So for uneven land, sprinkler method was used. But for places which already experienced water scarcity or where there was not enough water and saving every drop of water was essential, drip irrigation was used. Now in drip irrigation, we saw that there were various networks and there would be these small nozzles that were there which would provide water drop by drop near the roots of the plant. And that's why it is often known as drip irrigation, and this of course conserves more water when compared to your sprinkler method, right? So these are different ways of which modern methods can be implemented. Now that we have provided it with water as well, our crops will start to grow, right? Our crops are growing, everything is fine. But there could be that at times along with our crops, some unwanted or undesirable plants could be grown. Now, these undesirable plants that grow along with our crops is what we call as weeds. And why are these weeds not good for our crops? Because at the end of the day, they will compete with our crops for sunlight, nutrients, and water. And if there is a competition happening between the crops that we want or our desirable plant versus undesirable plant, it could affect the growth of this as well, right? Which is why they need to be removed. And this process of removal of weeds is what we call as weeding. Now, weeding can be done using traditional tools like khurpi, or it could be done by using certain chemicals like 2,4-D, which is a weedicide. So what are weedicides? Weedicides are chemicals that will destroy the weeds. Now, we also see that there could be some biological agents, right, which could be used in this case as well. So now, of course, what have we done? We have gotten rid of the weeds as well. Now, as we allow our crops to grow, there will reach a point when all the crops will mature. And then we will harvest it, right? So we see that if this was my piece of land where I'm growing my crops and all my crops have matured, I will cut my crops closer to the base. And this process is what we call as harvesting, making sure that we get all of these matured crops. Now this can be again done using a sickle manually, or we see that there are, modern tools by which we are able to carry this out. Now once we have harvested, at times maybe for, rice and wheat where we need to obtain the grains, right? So here in this case, it's not that I need the whole crop as it is. I need a part of it. For rice and wheat, I require the grains. So how do I get the grains? So first and foremost, I need to separate my grains from the stalk. And this process of separation, so I'm writing this down because this is also very important on an examination front. So separation of grains from straw. And how do we separate it? By beating it, right? By beating it and separating it out is what we call as threshing. And once we have separated it, all the chaff or the undesirable parts that remain also need to get separated out. And this is again done manually. So separation of seeds from chaff is what we call as winnowing, so that the chaff being a little more lightweight will separate out and the grains being more denser will fall down as it is. And this process is what we call as winnowing. And we see that threshing and winnowing are two very important steps when it comes to the post-harvesting techniques. Now that we have separated out all the unwanted things, it's time for me to sell it. Now, it's not that at one go, whatever I produce as a farmer, I will be able to sell it out. There will be a part of it which I will need to store, right? So, storage also is necessary so that at the end of the day, when I'm cultivating it at large scale, I store my crop so that it can then be transported to different parts. Now, storing can be done either by, storing it in jute bags or in metallic bins. But storing steps or while storing, certain precautions need to be taken. Because we see that these grains that are there could be, subjected to damage by some pests or maybe small animals that are there. There could be certain microorganisms that could grow on it, like certain fungus. Because at the end of the day, if there is moisture that is there on the grains, this will serve as a source for the growth of these microbes. And again, of course, there could be attacked by insects as well. Which is why in order to overcome this, we see that sun drying is very, very important. Sun drying and making sure that it is absolutely dry and there's not enough moisture present and we've gotten rid of it, that is step number 1. Step number 2 is addition of neem leaves, because neems tend to have a characteristic smell, right? And we see that this characteristic smell and certain chemical components will drive away the pests and prevent growth of microbes. So with this, of course, we see there are storage challenges, and they will ask you what are the storage challenges and what precautions can we take. So again, on an examination front, this is very, very important, right? So please make a note of this. So with this, of course, we come to the end-to-end understanding of how crops are grown at a large scale. But I told you agriculture was not just about growing crops, but it was also about rearing animals. So this process, right, or this branch of agriculture that deals with rearing of animals at a large scale is what we call as animal husbandry. So we see that we have cattle, we have poultry, we have fish farming, all of these different branches under animal husbandry where we rear these animals for commercial benefits. So with this, if you see, under 30 minutes, we have finished our entire chapter summary. Now, do you want to check if you have understood this chapter thoroughly, if you have done your end-to-end preparation? If you want to check, here's an exam prep test. Now, in the link or in the description below, you will find a link to a Google form where you will have a few questions. Now, I need you to solve those questions, and in the comments below, right? So, in the comments below, I need you to tell me how much you scored. What was your score for this particular prep test? And after every chapter summary, we will be doing this to make sure that you have end-to-end thorough understanding of every chapter. So if you found this session helpful and if you have taken your exam prep test, trust me, you have covered, or you are a master at crop production and management. And of course, before I wind up, here's a reminder for the BYJU'S National Scholastic and Personality Test, which is happening from 21st of Jan to 5th of Feb. So it's happening during the weekends, right? And you have 3 slots wherein it will be a test for maths and science, and of course it is happening for free in the BYJU'S Tuition Center or in the BTC centers. Now, why is this particular test important? First and foremost, this particular test will also be serving you like a mock test, and it will help you understand how much you are aware of. But at the end of the day, this particular test will also be giving you a personalized academic report that will tell you what are your strong points, what are your weak points, where you need to work on, what are some of your behavioral analysis that it will do. It will also identify your capabilities and will also give you suggested career options. So this right here is not just a normal academic mock test that's happening, but it will also give you an in-depth analysis. And this is something that you need to go for. And along with this, you stand a chance to win scholarship as well. So this is something that will definitely help you for your future. So everybody, again, the link is there in the description below to register for the BNSPT test. So do not forget to register. And of course, you know we've got you covered, right? And if you believe that BYJU'S 6 to 8 is where you need to be, then please make sure that you hit the like button and you do not forget to share this video with your friends and tell them that, hey, I learned from here and I found crop production easy and this is where you need to be. And of course, to have more updates on what we do on the channel, do not forget to subscribe. So with this, of course, I'll be signing off. See you very soon. Up until then, bye everybody. Take care.